Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Boys, we're back with another in context. I think we should discuss the recent Netanyahu visit. Definitely want to look at what he was trying to achieve and what the U.S. would like to, to negotiate and what's happening regarding the back and forth between them. This visit, in my opinion, was very different than his last visit, so I think there's something to discuss. We collectively said we need to address Muslims believing the Israeli leaks and Muslims resharing it, reposting it. They're falling into this trap. We need to discuss that as well, if that makes sense. I'll leave it to you.
Netanyahu's visit to the White House was the third one since Trump took over. US media made noises that he is coming to take a victory lap. That sounds credible to me. But that is not very relevant to understanding where the Middle East stands and where Israel is heading in the Middle East. I think Netanyahu, in his mind, came to make demands on the US to give Israel a larger role in the Middle East as a subcontractor. I think that the US did not say no, although it didn't say yes as well. So Israel has been making noises for the last few weeks that we are going to attack Iran again. We retain the right to attack Iran at will. And Iran has been responding by saying that is not true. We're not Lebanon. We're not doing that. And we have things in reserve that we haven't used, and we know that. The US seems to be saying that we don't mind Israel expanding the region of its aggression to include Iran. But I think that is not true. I think that the US would like to use Israel as a stick to get Iran to relinquish its nuclear program for nothing. I don't think that is going to happen, but I think Trump, in his pretty little orange mind, thinks he can do it, and that's why he is letting Netanyahu loose. Netanyahu also has grand designs on becoming a colonial power on his own right in the Middle East. I think that's complete nonsense because he's very dependent on the US, and the minute he is harming US interests, he would get to know it very well. However, in the minute, he thinks so, and his audience in Israel thinks so, and Trump doesn't mind that. Netanyahu also on the sidelines was trying to keep the war going, hoping to get more out. It's not obvious what he wants exactly in Gaza because he can't get what he wants, which is get rid of the people, and he can't accept that fact. So all what he is doing is he keep running forward, hoping to get more of something. So he is negotiating, and in the process of negotiation, he actually retards negotiation further. He comes up with new proposals that are actually farther away from resolution than the previous under discussion negotiations. And as a result, the negotiations broke down yesterday.
Yeah, I think that, it's a constant process of Netanyahu coming to Washington and trying to extract more and to get more leverage to do what he wants. I do think Trump, I still think at some point Israel will again attack Iran, but I don't think Trump wants that to happen again anytime soon. I genuinely think Trump prefers quieter Middle East. I don't think he wants to see Israel turn Iran into Lebanon, because eventually that will, at some point, land right on the front steps of a U.S. airbase. Like, it's going to happen. It already did happen. We found out recently that Iran, in fact, did hit the U.S. airbase. It wasn't all intercepted. And as more evidence continues to leak from the war, it's becoming clearer and clearer that Iran actually did hit more targets than we all thought. And I'll admit myself that I bought into the propaganda that they were super ineffective. Then the more as time goes on, we find out that actually this military installation was hit, and actually this important site was totally destroyed. So it's clear that the damage done was enough to sort of speed up the ceasefire. And I do believe that Israel could not ultimately continue a long-term war with anybody without U.S. direct support. And I don't think Trump wants to jump in there. He's already facing a lot of blowback domestically from his far-right base because of this Epstein thing. And don't underestimate this Epstein scandal. It's big, because this is what his people care about. And this Pam Bondi, if she's not gone in the next couple of weeks anyways, it's going to continue to, I mean, she is absolutely, she's like almost Hillary Clinton level toxic right now within that far right megasphere. And, everyone, the logic is that she is basically protecting Trump. That's what everyone thinks, from what's damaging information in that file. And that's all bad. And I've noticed as I follow social media, the position on the right regarding Israel is every day shifting more and more hostile. And you can see the panic in the pro-Zionist right, the Laura Loomer crowds, and these other sort of influencers that really are in panic mode because this MAGA base is really splitting on this Israel issue. And more people are waking up to the reality that Israel really does dominate and control major aspects of U.S. foreign policy, and potentially U.S. domestic policy. So I think with all that background, Trump is a man whose whole purpose is his own survival, his own vanity. And I think that he's walking a tightrope because I personally think Israel probably does have some information on him that they could release at some point to really make him look bad. So he's basically trying to appeal to two bases that both can really harm him. So with that in mind, I don't see it in Trump's interest to further anger that base by starting a massive war, which is something, the two big things as far-right base are, one, no more wars in the Middle East, and two, Epstein, right? He can't fail on both of those. He can't start a massive war with Iran and hide those files, or he'll just lose everybody, right? And this tax bill that just got passed, which is going under the radar, the effects of this are going to start to be felt very soon. And there's a lot of very unhappy people when they lose their health insurance and all the other stuff that is in this plan that most Americans have very little idea about. And that this is all going to start to catch up to him. This bill was super unpopular, deeply unpopular. Less than 30% approval rating on this specific big, beautiful bill that just got passed. So I think that, Trump has to put out fires and, a lot of distraction going on, the stupid stuff today about taking away Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship, even though she was a naturally born citizen, which is just pure, this is just crazy rantings. And even his base, some of the real base people are like, come on, you can't take citizenship of a natural born citizen. You sound crazy, stop. So, that's getting back to Israel, though. It's clear that they have an interest in establishing their own colonial imperial legacy in the region. But I just don't know how far that's going to go. And I just feel like Netanyahu's time is running out. He can't just keep starting wars and survive forever. So I think that things are going to change eventually in the region. But as for Gaza, I have no idea. Every single day it seems like there's more and more. This morning, 100 people were killed. 30 people were killed, literally waiting. And the news press isn't even reporting this stuff. 30 people killed waiting in a bread line. It's not even it's making it clear these are totally innocent people. And it's just a daily thing now. This level of killing cannot go on forever. So the EU is getting more and more critical, and the language is becoming more and more, I guess, serious regarding cutting off support for Israel, especially with Gaza. So, that's where I see things right now. It's just my brief comment.
So just a couple of comments about the orange clown. So actually, the fact that the orange clown was claiming that nothing was hit, and they were very polite to us on all of that nonsense, and then the images coming showing that there was actual damage doesn't look good. So when Lula yesterday, the president of Brazil, was saying that this president is not responsible, yeah, he has a point. And that's a good thing for humanity. The fact that the emperor is walking naked and people are actually saying it is quite good for humanity. Yeah. Regarding the internal problems of the clown, the problem with conspiracy theories is if you are in opposition, you can always make a lot of hay with them, which is exactly what Trump did. But if you are in government, they become a problem, because how can you resolve the conspiracy? It's a conspiracy about something that doesn't exist. So what can you do about it? So he is in a bad place of his own doing, which is okay, good. Probably what he's end up going to do is find an scapegoat like Pam Bondi, which she's quite good for. Aside from internal U.S. politics, yeah, another point about U.S. politics, actually, Trump damage to the federal government and to the budget just showed up in Texas. So it's already hitting. Yeah, I expect that is going to damage him in the next 2 years. Externally, which is more of our interest, to the US, the Middle East is backwaters. This whole area is under colonial control, and their business is running well. The engine is humming. So as long as Israel doesn't, upset the apple cart, they are fine to keep it humming. They have more important things to do in China. So the perception of Netanyahu in on the conservative side, even on the Democratic side, is a troublemaker who keeps distracting us. The fact that there are lovers and supporters of murder and mayhem in the conservative side of the House and even on the liberal side of the House may distract from this, but in the end, this is a capitalist country and money rules. So he's out of line, but nobody has an interest in saying that because that comes with a cost, and nobody wants to pay the cost. And that this game has been going on for 2 years now. The US is not overly concerned about the killings. Although if I were the US, I would be concerned. Today, there is a video of a US missionary standing on top of a wall and shooting directly at people waiting for food. So it's not Israel that is committing the murder with US support now. It's the US that is committing the murder. So if I were the US, I would be concerned because that's damaging.
No, I totally agree. I think that, really, people have made this point in recent weeks. You see this weird populist left and populist right sort of coming to a consensus on really how atrocious things are in Gaza. And, it's one thing for Israel to be committing these atrocities because that's not us, at least, right? But once you have American soldiers involved in this, it becomes really, really toxic. And pretty soon, the only people who support Israel are basically hardcore Zionists and like people that are Jewish Zionists and maybe the most extreme evangelical Christian messianic cult kind of thinking people. But all that other sort of middle ground people, I think, is souring Israel very quick. And that's something that Trump, I think, is intuitively aware of. He can't be that clueless. He's not Joe Biden.
No, I don't think Joe Biden was ever clueless. And I don't think Trump is clueless. He's just screwed and ugly.
I think Biden was partially clueless, to be honest. And I think he had a messianic mission himself. You can follow Biden's comments back to the 1980s about the need to create an Israel if it didn't already exist. I don't think Trump has this kind of devotion. And Trump is the kind of guy who's probably every day getting a report fed to him about his popularity rating. So I don't think he's going to let this sink him. He's going to do whatever he can to avoid getting too bogged down into this morass. So that's sort of how I see things going in the medium term.
To my mind, Biden was never messianic. He is a colonialist thug who looks grandfatherly, but he's a colonialist thug. So he has always had the stance that we need to colonize the Middle East. Israel is a very good investment in the project of colonizing the Middle East. And that is a very national position.
It's a classic liberal worldview, the classic, liberalizing, warmongering, bringing democracy to the worldview that dominated American politics for many decades. Like, this is the mindset, democratize these people. And this is something that was consensus. Democrats and Republicans bought into this. It was only the far left rejected this.
Yes.
But now we have the far right, and now the moderate right, and now basically the only people who support this are like sort of this weird little neocon slash.
Joseph,
reasons.
So the far left outside the mainstream do not believe in colonialism, but those are outside the mainstream, completely outside, not in the Democratic Party even.
Well, that's what I'm talking. Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got the Bernie Sanderses and the AOCs and.
No, these guys are inside. These guys are in the mainstream, and these guys do not mind the colonial project. They sometimes make noises because they have supported that part, but they don't believe in that. These guys are part of the project. About the right-wing people, the right-wing people are fine with colonialism. They just want effective colonialism. So we should, get value for our money. But they are fine with the project. Completely fine.
I'm not saying
Everybody's fine
anything
with the project as long as we get value for the money.
I guess I'm
That
not,
applies to Biden as well.
I'm not trying. I'm not saying. Okay, yes, I see what you're saying with colonialism. I agree with that for the most part. But as for actual American involvement in the region to bring democracy and to actually put the effort in required to properly colonize, I think there is a growing opposition to that. I don't think these guys want to invest the money, time, and soldiers in doing that. I don't think anybody wants another Iraq. Does anybody really want that in the U.S. government? Other than a few, maybe really, really extreme figures.
Nobody wants another Iraq.
Humors. Yeah, exactly. So that's my point.
There is a deception game that goes on. So colonialism is practiced in the name of moral goals like liberalization and freeing women from their men and stuff like that. But actually, the actual rational calculus is not this. The actual rational calculus is if we're not there, then others are there. If others are there, they will harm our interests. We have to be there to make sure that our interests are guaranteed. That's the rational argument. Now, to justify this in the street to Joe in the street, Joe the plumber, as they used to say, you have to make these moralistic nonsense on the liberal side, or we're going to protect Christians on the right-wing side, or stuff like that. You have to make it look good.
But my point is the language of bringing democracy and freedom is gone. Nobody's using that talk anymore, left or right. That whole George Bush mission accomplished kind of, we've democratized Iraq. That game is over.
Yes.
Like, and so, and that when you use that kind of language, you can justify a long-term military intervention and a lot of money being spent. So that's a big project, right? Bringing democracy to Afghanistan. But when you're just trying to basically serve and not let the Russians take over, you can't justify as much time and resources and money spent on that. So you can still say, look, we need to be there to make sure we don't lose our interest, but at the same time, that's not the same as having boots on the ground. It's marching. It's a change. It's changed for the better.
It becomes a shorter term project. It doesn't justify as much outlay in resources, human or capital. Yes.
Yes.
So there is an evolution in the colonial state. Yeah, that's a valid point. Yes, quite valid. Fine. So if we go back to the other side, which is related to this, that's the fascination of a lot of Muslims who pretend to be doing political analysis with repeating nonsense they read in pro Netanyahu Israeli media. So over the last several months, it has become a weekly chore for me to just whack-a-mole of the latest conspiracy theory launched by Jerusalem Post or Israel Today. And that is complete nonsense.
Give me an example.
The usual weekly deal with Syria. Yes, there is negotiations today in Baku, by the way, between Israel and Syria. But no, it's not going anywhere. Because the Syrian government is saying, well, give us the land you stole after the Bashar fell. And the Israelis are not willing to do that. Before we start negotiating anything seriously, go back. And the Israelis are not going to do that, so nothing doing. And meanwhile, every other day we get a new leak, and people are either justifying treason or shouting treason, and there is nothing. What is this nonsense? We have turned to propagandists for the Israelis, and even Israeli media has multi levels. So there is mainstream media that pretends to be credible, although it's not credible, and much less its credibility standard is much less than those of Western media that is already not great. But they are going after the worst of the worst. What's this craze? People need to make sense and get serious.
I totally agree with that. I think regarding stuff, all this conspiracies about Syria and normalizing Abraham Accords and all this nonsense, I think one, this is a strategy that Trump uses. They like to sort of push this narrative to like, well, we already said that you're normalizing, so you better do it, or it's gonna, you know what I mean? Like, it's like this, the kind of trick your mom as a kid would do to get you to eat your vegetables. She sort of put them halfway in your mouth or fill your plate with them and say, well, it's already there, so you better eat them, right? No pizza tonight, right? This is exactly what Trump does. So like, the people really need to take this stuff like very, very skeptically. And, it's just totally irresponsible to like not know whether you're citing a pro-Israeli source or a source, or it's totally irresponsible to just know it's an Israeli source, just not reputable, and cite it anyways. But it's also irresponsible to like look at a lot of these sources that are coming from a pro-Iran perspective. They're doing everything they can to make what's going on in Syria look as treacherous and treasonous as possible. I see people retweeting well-known people who have been connected to the pro-Iran side of the Syrian discussion, well-known figures, and people are retweeting this stuff as if it's fact. And I think this is why I'm very reticent to retweet stuff on the ground until I really can get multiple confirmations of its truth, because there's so much disinformation and misinformation going on right now. And it just makes you look bad. But the problem with this is, again, like a lot of people are out looking for more clicks and more views on their profile. So if you spread something that's wrong and sensational, you get 10,000, 100,000 hits. And like, this is the problem. When you give boring political analysis, it is sort of like, okay, let's take this carefully. We shouldn't jump to conclusions. You're going to be lucky to get 100 views, right? I mean, this is all part of the problem, is the way the algorithm works. And, I always have this perspective. And when I see a blue check account, I'm always skeptical of that, because I know the blue check account is meant to get clicks. That's the whole point. That's why you pay that $8 a month. I refuse to pay it. I know I could have a lot more followers and a lot more influence if I wanted to. People do sort of like to hear my stuff. But at the same time, I refuse to pay Elon Musk one penny of my money out of a pure moral perspective. Even if it's damaging my own potential outreach, I just won't do it. I cannot feed into this. Like, I will not give money to the Dajjal-like figure. I'm just not doing it. But like, there's a lot of people who will. So when you see that, you should be careful with that. Otherwise, you're going to just make yourself look less credible, right? Because once you damage your credibility, it's very hard to bring that back. This is why I try very hard to avoid retweeting misinformation. And if I do accidentally, I immediately delete it. And I would advise all of our followers out there who do this to take that advice, because once you throw away your credibility, once you're known as the guy who regularly retweets accounts that end up being false, pretty soon nobody's going to listen to you anymore.
I have two more points to make. The first one is interesting that when it comes to Syria, the Israel side and the Iran side are one side. So one feeds the other and back. It's crazy. Another place where these kinds of rumors keep coming up is Gaza. The last point I want to make is beyond clicks and number of followers, the problem with these kinds of news is it corrupts your thinking. Because you stop knowing which way is up. And if you don't know which way is up, you're lost. Yes, slow and sure may miss an important event before it appears, or it may even be late to realize it as it happens. But your mental processes, your thinking process, your political imagination, political analysis, your structure itself is secure and safe and stable. It's not corrupted and contaminated. Once you start accepting nonsense information, you stop figuring out what is right and what's wrong, and you're just hallucinating and being led by others.
I think we got it.
Okay, that's all we have. Okay, Jazakumullah khairan.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Shabab.
Thank you.